Hello, hello, good morning. We
Morning.
are live. Hello again and welcome to Headline English. I'm teacher Fabio and with me is teacher Danielle. We are super excited to bring you this new and engaging way to improve your English skills. On this show, we will be discussing the latest news headlines and stories, and we will break them down in a way that it's easy for you to understand. And I hope, of course, that it will also be fun. So whether you are a student or a professional looking to improve your language skills, or maybe just someone who loves to stay informed, Headline English is the place for you. We've got you covered. And let's get started, Mr. Daniel. What is the first news story
Hello.
we are talking about today?
So good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. Today we're going to talk about something that if you're going to listen to this podcast on a daily, you have to know. I love sports. I really love sports, and especially female sports. I remember when I was younger, a little boy from Itaquera going to Pacaembu Stadium to watch players like Marta and Cristiane, and I was always wondering, like, why aren't there so many people here as they were at Morumbi Stadium when I was at the São Paulo game? And I always try to understand why those things happen and why women's sports were always so neglected, especially when we come to advertisement and money wise. When you go to this sort of conversation. So, Fab, wanna know from you? Tell me, how do you like sports, and how was your sports experience when you were a teenager?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I really like sports. I'm more like the guy who likes doing sports than watching sports, but I like all sorts of sports, right? But I have never had the habit of like going to the stadium and watching games and things like that, right? But I think early on, I also realized that there was something different towards female sports and male sports. Of course, especially when I was younger, I think things have been changing in a positive direction in recent years, but still, there is very different treatment and a very different amount of attention regarding like female top players, for example, and male top players. They don't make as much money, which is always the case, unfortunately, for women, apparently, in all professions. And then it's not different about sports. So it's really sad, right? And I think that's what the news story we are discussing is about, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought the point that you were more like a player than a watcher, because this experience is about a player and actually a former runner, Lauren Flashman. She was a 5K winner in America and also in the entire planet. And she said that ever since she was a girl, she's always been a great runner, but never as great as her male peers. So I wanna bring her audio so she can explain better than me what happened to her when she was a teenager. Okay, so let's get started.
Let's check that out.
So here, let's get started on her experience.
Of being a late bloomer. So when I first got beat by one of my male peers in middle school in the mile, it was because he hit puberty and kind of skyrocketed his performance in the mile in a very short period of time. And I had been led to believe that I could do anything that my male peers could do in the girl power revolution of the 90s, and very much internalized that and thought it applied to sport as well. And winning and being the fastest runner overall in my school and middle school was part of my identity. It was very disorienting to find out that puberty was going to create two different paths for my male peers and my female peers, and that I was on the one that I wasn't so sure I wanted to be on.
So that's interesting because she said that she was led to believe that she could do everything she wanted, especially when compared to her male peers. But all of a sudden, one of her friends' performance just skyrocketed. So what is skyrocketed? Fabio, would you guess what is it? Skyrocketed.
I think I can guess. But before that, I really would like to comment on that. It's crazy, right? Like, as guys, we never think about the privileges we have. And there is the privilege of hormones, which is a crazy one to think about, right? I would never think as a teenager that I had an advantage because of puberty, because of my hormones. So that's crazy, right? And it's true. During adolescence, our hormones skyrocket, and also, as we could see in that case, the performance for in sports. So skyrocket is related to a rocket going up and high and fast towards the sky, right? So to increase very fast, it's crazy. That's an interesting point, and this is just one of the aspects that put women in disadvantage in sports, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, and you actually never think about it as we come from a male perspective. But as soon as I heard this interview, I was like, damn, why haven't I thought of this before? And it's crazy. It's crazy to just see that. So it skyrocketed. I was trying to think of a Portuguese explanation for skyrocketed. And I was going through social media last night, and I remembered that sentence, foguete não dá ré, when you go very fast, when you go very fast. So I think skyrocketed, it's like when you go very fast and when you increase your performance, as happened to her male peer in this case. And I would like to bring another example to explain this verb to our fellow students. So I like to talk about the stock market, especially about all of those crazy things that are happening in Brazil nowadays. So talking about that, I would like to bring one example saying that my stock prices have skyrocketed, and I'm so glad about it. I wish this was true.
Good to know, man. Let's talk about money afterwards, okay?
Yeah. We also have another part of her talk here that I would like to speak about, that she says that her experience has changed as well, not only for her male peers, but for her as well. And as well has the same meaning as true when we use in a sentence. So I would like to bring another example talking about this very good expression. So my other stocks are of great value as well. This I also
Come
wish
on,
was
man.
true. But
Let's change this whole podcast, videocast. Let's do it about money, man. You are like a money advisor. You can help us get rich,
I wish though. And there's another word that I would like to point out, because not only the meaning of it, but how we pronounce it. And she says here, it was very disoriented to find out that puberty was going to create two different paths for my male peers and my female peers. So paths is like we can call it as a synonym for way, but has a deeper meaning. So we can call it our path of life, and it's interesting because when we see the TH, we always, get around our heads like, how can I pronounce that sound? But actually, when we have the letter S after it, we can say paths, not paths, but paths, and I think it's interesting to point out that. And another tip about money.
Always say
have a lot of money,
TH in the plural form, right? This is a pronunciation tip to avoid the TH problem. Just use the plural form, right?
Yeah, so paths. So if I didn't have this money, I would choose a different path, or I would choose different paths. So that's all I got to say about sports. I wish we could talk more, but I heard there has been a storm in Brasilia. Fabio, tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, the second news story we were talking about is about indeed a different type of a storm. And especially in Brasilia, if you know Brasilia, it doesn't really rain very often in Brazilian. So this storm is not about water. It's a definitely different one. Let me bring it to us here. So here we have it. This is an article by Time magazine. Pro-Bolsonaro protesters storm Brazil's Congress and the presidential building, right? So, yeah, generally people know storm as a strong rain, you know. But what is that? Tipo, choveu bolsonarista in Brasília? Not exactly, or maybe in a way like it kind of makes sense, right? But no, very sadly, actually, that's not what happened, right? What happened is that thousands of supporters of Bolsonaro attacked the Congress, the Supreme Court, and the presidential palace in Brazil on January 8th, about a week after the inauguration of Lula, right? So it was a chaotic situation. The demonstrators bypassed security barricades. They climbed on roofs. They smashed windows. They invaded all three buildings, and they destroyed a lot of things. They even stole some things, right? So it was a very crazy and tragic situation. You know, in the end, police arrested hundreds of demonstrators and now is investigating who organized and financed the attack on Congress, right? But then, well, first of all, have you been following this story? How did you react to this when you first got to know about what had happened, Mr. Daniel?
My first reaction was sort of shock. You know, I was shocked because you know that thing that you always expect to happen, but when it happens, it surprises you. You know, and I think that was it because I've been in a Brazil that's been democratic ever since. You know, I was born in '98, so for me, this idea of agree to disagree or disagree to agree is normal. You know, so this Brazil that has becoming this crazy thing that you can actually agree with people, but they can say, no, you're wrong. Even if I agree with you, you're wrong. And I will try to convince you as much as I can because there's this new story about it that nobody's talking about, a lot of conspiracy theories. And I'm an internationalist. So as I had to study a lot about those processes, I try to stay out of it a little bit so I don't get mad about it because you can see in history what happens, you know, when we don't respect democratic processes. So I'm still digesting all the situation, you know. But when I first saw it, I was like, really? Is this what's happening to Brazil
is
right
this real?
Yeah.
Is
But
this
not
the
shocked.
real?
Yeah.
Yeah, shocked is definitely a good word to describe how most of us felt when we learned about what had happened, right? And it makes me think like, I don't know, it's like when you're playing a board game against an opponent that is not a very good loser, you know? And then at some point they decide to just, you know, mess up with the board and the pieces, you know. But you don't really win the game by messing up with the board and the pieces. You just like mess up with the game, and then you know, there is no winner. And I think we have to learn how to deal with different points of view, and that's what, you know, democracy is about. But it's really sad when some people come to believe that the only way to solve things is by messing up with the board and messing up with the game and the rules, you know. But well, so back to the storm, right? Let's just have a look at this sentence here which is the headline, right? Pro-Bolsonaro supporters storm Brazilian Congress, right? So a storm means to suddenly attack and capture a building or other place by means of force, like We could use a storm, for example, in a sentence like this. The group of robbers attempted to storm the bank, but were stopped by the police. You see that it's so nice when the police stop people who are trying to storm a place. That's an interesting example to look at. Right? So that's the meaning of storm.
Especially when they're asking for a military intervention. I think it's interesting, when that happens.
That's true. Yeah, exactly right. So storm is a very strong verb. It's about this violent attack, right? So it's not a light verb. It's not a verb we should use all the time. When we see this being used by like the Time magazine, we know like there is this tone of disapproval. If if you storm a place, you're not doing the right thing most of the time, right? Yeah. And as you said, and this is related to another sentence from the news story that I highlighted, some people there, or maybe many people there, called for a military intervention to oust Lula from the presidency, right? It's an interesting word as well. Like, and it looks so weird, but in the end, if you look closer and you understand that this is related to out. So to oust is to put out, right? I remember I learned this word when Dilma Rousseff was impeached. Many international newspapers used the word oust, like Dilma was ousted, right? So she was, as we have here the definition, she was driven out or she was expelled from her position, right? So, as you said, this is concerning, right? And this is a reason, a big reason why something should have been done to stop what was going on, right? Unfortunately not. Here we have an example that could apply to maybe Americanas' case. The company's board of directors voted to oust the CEO due to poor performance, right? So they decided that the CEO should be fired in this case, right? Simply put, right? But that's the idea. To oust is to expel, right? From a position, but also from a place, right? So in some cases, it could be about places, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because we can say that when we use the verb oust, the person can be driven out of her position. So I was telling you yesterday that I've always heard this verb as ousted, as an adjective. I've been ousted, he was ousted, because usually you don't oust yourself from a position. You have to be ousted.
No, so, exactly.
That's a
by point. Force, probably, right?
Yeah.
No one is really willing to leave a position very easily, like without resistance, right? And well, the last sentence that I highlighted here was this one. Lula accused Bolsonaro of encouraging the uprising, right? And uprising is an interesting word in my view because it sounds a bit redundant. Up is up and rise is up. Like when you talk about sunrise, the sun is going up, right? So uprising, o sobe-sobe, I don't know, like Lula acusou Bolsonaro de encorajar o sobe-sobe. What is that? What?
No, like going up and up.
Yeah, maybe they would. Yeah, it would have been much better if they had just danced in front of Congress. But no, yeah, uprising is an organized rebellion, especially against an authority or government, right? So it is indeed about like levantar-se, né? Tipo levante, né? Tipo como se fosse uma revolta, né? And it's not always about something bad. For example, as we can see here in this example, the workers began an uprising against their oppressive employer, right? So you could begin an uprising for good purposes. You know, it's not always to call for a military intervention simply because you lost elections, but you can also use that in ways that this is indeed, you know, a good thing, you know. So
Yeah, actually, in Brazil, in
yeah.
Brazil's history, we had the Diretas Já, who was a great uprising movement in Brazil. You know,
That's
in
a
the
very good
80s.
example. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, and that was it. So this was my news story. We started this first episode with some controversial big topics, right? I think definitely female players and sports people is controversial. They are fighting for more recognition. They are fighting for more space in the media. And of course, what happened in Brazil is super controversial. But well, controversy is big news, right? And this is a show about big news. So yeah. So
It's
this
about
is
big
it, I think.
headlines. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
So if you like to listen to our podcast or watch our podcast, please follow us on YouTube at Headline English BR. You can also find us on Instagram and our personal profiles. We have lexus.english and also teacher, and we'll be more than glad to help you improve your English experience. And if you have any comment about this, we are more than happy to hear. So thank you for being with us, and see you in next two Fridays. Yeah, that's 2 Fridays. So
In 2 weeks' times, exactly. If
Yeah,
you are
yeah, yeah.
watching this, like, if you are not watching us live, if you were watching this recorded later, you can join us every 2 weeks, 7:15 on Friday. You can follow us on Instagram, so you get notifications and reminders about the next Headline English. And thank you a lot for being with us. Thank you, Danielle. It was a great first episode, I think. I'm
you. I
looking
loved it.
forward to the next one already.
Me too. See you, man. Bye bye.
See you. Bye-bye. Back here.